You hear about these big, sweeping national policies all the time, right? But what do they actually mean for real people, for businesses on the ground? Well, today, we're going to look at exactly that. We're going to see how one major policy decision rippled all the way down to a single factory floor and ended up forcing a reckoning that would change a community forever.
So, let's head to North St. Louis. This is where our story really begins. We're talking about an industrial landmark, a business that's been a part of the city for 70 years, and it's shutting its doors for good. You know, this isn't just another company going out of business. For a lot of people, this is truly the end of an era. And the scale of this shutdown, it's just massive. I mean, to clear the place out, they are auctioning off everything. We're talking over 1,000 individual pieces of heavy-duty machinery. Think about it, welders, giant presses, cranes. These are the very tools that literally helped build the region.
So that leads to the big question, right? Why? Why would a company with such deep historic roots just liquidate an entire division? Well, the answer is a really fascinating story about national policy, skyrocketing prices, and just immense pressure.
All right, so to really get the big picture, we've got to start with the specifics. Let's look at exactly what happened on the ground here. Okay, so the company at the center of all this is Ben Hur Steel Works. They're a major steel fabricator in St. Louis. And let's be super clear here. They're not just closing this one plant. Nope. They're getting out of the steel fabrication business entirely. Now, it's worth pointing out that their parent company, Ben Hur Construction, is still going to be around. But this specific, huge 22-acre industrial hub, it's going dark.
And that property, that 22-acre site, is now up for sale. The asking price? A cool $7.5 million. So yeah, this isn't just a simple shutdown. This is a massive liquidation of a really significant industrial asset. So how in the world does a 70-year-old operation end up here? To figure that out, we have to zoom out. We need to leave the factory floor for a minute and look at a national policy that completely changed the game for everyone, from Washington, D.C. all the way to St. Louis. You can really see how this all unfolded over just a few years. Okay, so look at March 2018. That's when the US government puts these huge tariffs on most imported steel. Then, fast forward just a few years, and bam, you see the direct result right there on the ground, the closure of this very plant. The timing? It's pretty hard to ignore that connection. So, what exactly is this policy? It's known as the Section 232 tariffs. Basically, it's a really powerful and pretty controversial tool. It lets the government tax imports if they decide those imports are a threat to national security. And back in 2018, that's exactly what they did with steel, which, as you can imagine, created some very clear winners and some very clear losers. And the impact was immediate. This policy slapped a huge 25% tax on most steel coming into the country. The whole idea was pretty simple, really. Make foreign steel more expensive so that companies would be pushed to buy from American mills instead. So that's the official line, right? The stated goal was to pump up American steel mills and make us less dependent on foreign suppliers. The logic was, hey, if foreign steel costs more, our own mills can compete better. And in theory, that means more jobs, a stronger American industry, all good stuff. But in the real world, it ended up creating this huge split right down the middle of the industry.
And that brings us to the real heart of the conflict here. Because, whenever you try to protect one part of an industry, you almost always end up squeezing another part. It's a classic economic trade-off, and it has very real winners and losers.
Okay, so here's the most important thing to understand. Think of the steel industry as having two different teams. On one team, you've got the steel mills, the guys who actually make the raw steel. For them, these tariffs were fantastic. Suddenly, their cheaper foreign competition was way less of a threat, and they could charge more. But then you have the other team, the steel fabricators, companies like Ben Hur. These are the guys who have to buy all that raw steel to build things. For them, the tariffs meant their #1 expense just shot through the roof. It's a classic business squeeze. Your costs for raw materials suddenly jump. But you can't just hike your prices for your own customers. What happens? Your profit margin gets tighter and tighter, and for some companies like Ben Hur, it gets squeezed right down to nothing.
And just like that, we're back where we started. We're back at that 22-acre lot in St. Louis, where this big national policy trade-off became a very harsh, very local reality.
You see, a plant closure like this isn't just one event.
It's a shockwave. It creates all these ripple effects. You've got job losses for really skilled workers, welders, machinists. You've got this huge industrial property just sitting there, dark and empty. And then you've got all the local construction companies who just lost a key supplier. Now they have to scramble to find new and probably more expensive sources for the steel they need to, build our cities.
Now, to be fair, Ben Hur hasn't said the tariffs were the only reason. But their story? It's definitely not a one-off. All across the country, you're seeing lots of these smaller, mid-sized fabricators, the exact companies caught in the middle of this whole thing, facing the exact same pressure. They're being forced to adapt, to merge with others, or, like in this case, just get out of the business altogether.
And that really leaves us with a big, critical question, doesn't it? This policy, it was designed to help one part of American industry. And hey, you could argue that in some ways, it worked. But for the workers in St. Louis, for businesses like Ben Hur, the price was just enormous. So it makes you wonder, when we play this complex game of economic policy, with all its winners and losers, how do we actually measure the final score?